Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. My name is Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com, and joining me as always is my co-host Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org. And we're back here on a Wednesday. We do have a game week, but today we're going to talk about some new news that has surfaced about Mickey Joseph and some rumors with him and Arizona State. Before we get into that, just a reminder to subscribe to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel, like this video, get into the comment section, and let us know your thoughts. But Danny, I'll start with you. What's your initial reaction to this news that was broke by Sean Callahan and Husker Online on Tuesday?
I'm not really a huge fan of it. I mean, I'm happy for Mickey, but I mean, there is a chance that, in my opinion, that Nebraska could lose him just because he's a really good coach. On the other hand, my thinking here is why would all these kids agree to come here if they knew that Mickey was going to be gone in a couple of months, a couple of weeks, games even. So I don't know. I mean, I hope. I mean, part of me as a human being wants Mickey to succeed and do well, and I think Arizona State would give him a shot to do that. On the other hand, I don't want to lose him as a Nebraska football fan because he has, you know, not single-handedly, but been a huge reason why they recruited as well as they have.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw that yesterday. Arnold Barnes committed, and I mean, I know Brian Applewhite was in on this thing, but he talked a lot about Mickey, in his comments, and I don't think the kid from New Orleans would have come
No.
to committed to Nebraska without Mickey and Malachi Coleman or Marion Miller. I mean, the list really does go on and on. William Watson last night tweeted the quarterback commit in this class, to trust in Mickey as well, and so Mickey's kind of made up some relationships there. So he has been an exceptional recruiter, but at the same time, I think that's why Arizona State is interested in him. You look at the other candidate that's kind of been talked about. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about the ASU job, not like the Nebraska job. It's not quite as high profile, but Kenny Dillingham, the offensive coordinator at Oregon, has also been a guy that's been mentioned, and he is a really well-known recruiter. In the 2023 class, he was a huge reason that Oregon was able to land Dante Moore, a five-star quarterback that they basically stole out of Michigan's backyard, and Kenny Dillingham ended up being the reason why. So it seems to me that Arizona State is looking for a head coach that is able to be a strong recruiter. And we know that Mickey Joseph can do that. And the thing that I find that's just interesting about it is if you compare just Nebraska to Arizona State, just based off recruiting resources, that's a better job because there's actually like a recruiting pipeline in Arizona. Like if Mickey Joseph went to Arizona State and you shut down the state of Arizona, like you don't even really need to go outside of that state. It's kind of a burgeoning state in terms of, recruits. They turned out, Spencer Rattler, Dylan Rayola. So, I mean, they've had some elite quarterbacks and there's a lot of big time prospects out there. So if they can just get a coach, and like Mickey, who, has the leadership skills and the accountability, so you kind of add those things in. And then if he was able to recruit out there, plus some of his other ties, I mean, I think it would make a lot of sense. Not that I want that to happen, but, it is something to think about because there's always been this idea that if Mickey didn't come to Nebraska or he didn't get the job at Nebraska, he would stay as an associate head coach. And we always thought that would be, kind of the next head coach's decision. Well, it might be Mickey's too, depending on, because like if he has a chance to be a head coach somewhere else and it's not at Nebraska, he's not going to stay. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you roll the dice with these types of coaches not because of their skill set or recruiting ability, but because they are so high profile and successful at what they do that other teams are going to come calling. And so, if Nebraska lost Mickey Joseph, that would be a massive, massive blow to their recruiting and to their development at the wide receiver position because, there was one time, seems very long ago, that Matt Lubick was the offensive coordinator at Nebraska, and there wasn't a ton of development at the wide receiver position. And, we weren't getting much out of that position. And Mickey comes in, brings in Trey Palmer. In this season, Trey Palmer is probably the best wide receiver in the country. And so, it was nice to see the wide receiver position kind of, step up and really become a factor. And I would hate to lose that again.
Yeah, I mean that's those are all good points. We'll just have to see what happens. I mean, it's this report is interesting because it doesn't necessarily say that if it was Mickey's side that reached out, or if Arizona State reached out to him as a candidate. I mean, it's kind of unclear at this point, but he was in Arizona during the bye week. I mean, he could have very easily met with Arizona State administrators. And like I said, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it maybe puts a little bit of pressure on Trev Alberts. I mean, maybe that's why, this is getting leaked out right now. I'm not sure if that would be a smart move on Mickey's part or not, to try to apply that pressure. But, it could also be, I mean, who knows? It could be from the Nebraska side, with kind of putting out interest that, hey, if we hire Mickey, there's reasons why, we're not the only ones interested in him as a head coach. Or it could be totally a third party that, wants the same thing but isn't connected to either side. So, I mean, we really don't know how this got out there or why. We can all guess, but, there's a few different scenarios out there. But I don't know. What do you think if you're Trev Alberts? Like, do you think that this is the first he kind of learned about this, or what do you think about the whole behind the scenes of this reporting?
I mean, I feel like he probably knew a little bit of what was going on behind the scenes. I don't think, he knew.
I feel like Mickey probably would have told them, I guess.
Yeah, no, I don't feel like this was a big secret. I mean, this is the first we're hearing about it, but the fans often hear after everything is done or the wheels have been spinning, whether it be recruiting, coaching searches, yada yada yada. But no, I feel like there's probably been some communication with Mickey and Trev in regards to this. I don't know, bad or good, what was said or whatever, but I'm willing to put a solid amount of money on the fact that there's probably been some communication between Trev and Mickey because, this impacts their coaching search. And honestly, this could also increase Mickey's value to Nebraska. I mean, because, we just talked about what an elite recruiter he is, what an elite coach he is. And so this could potentially help him maybe get a little more money out of Nebraska or, kind of just drive up his value for Arizona State or something like that. I mean, I think this was a pretty good play by, Mickey's agent or whoever leaked the story because at the very least, it kind of gives Mickey an idea of where he stands in terms of the Nebraska job so that he can make a decision either way before, he has to scramble at the end of the season. I mean, I don't mind that play by his agent, honestly, because let's face it, college football is a cutthroat world and the coaching carousel is very unforgiving. And so, I don't know if Mickey would be able to find out where he stood just based off of the report, but it's a fair play by his agent, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's and who knows? Sean Callahan could have just sniffed it out, and maybe he heard it from sources that are on the Trev Albert side, because Mickey and Trev do meet once a week. I mean, they talk once a week. Mickey meets with Tom Osborne too, so I mean, I don't think that it probably didn't come out of left field. And as far as Trev Alberts, I don't know that it's going to change his decision on Mickey Joseph at all. I think either he believes that Mickey can be the next head coach at this point, or he doesn't. I don't know if, I mean, we've all talked about, this bowl game stuff and, how many wins and all that. But, it's kind of like, I mean, Trev's there. It's not, I mean, Trev has the closest viewpoint of anybody. So I don't know. I mean, if the record at the end of the day is going to be the biggest deciding factor. Now, if they lose every game and go 3-9, yeah, I don't think that Mickey's going to have a lot of momentum, to stick around as being the head coach. You do have to win games because it's like, if you can't win now, who's to say you're going to be able to win, with different play. I mean, I get there's different players and stuff, but you have to win no matter who you have on the team, no matter, who you're putting out there. You have to find a way to win and at least get the best effort out of your team. So we'll see what happens with Mickey over these next 4 games. I mean, it sure would help if Casey Thompson was back this week, but I don't know if this is going to change the calculation for Trev one way or the other. I feel like he had pretty, strong feelings about Mickey one way or the other. I mean, if you're leaning Mickey, then yeah, it's like you probably want to see him back it up with the wins. But if not, then unless he just like won every game, there might have been nothing he could do to sway Trev Alberts to take the job. If there's somebody that Trev already has in mind for it.
Honestly, if there's somebody not named Mickey, I want a big hire like Lane Kiffin or, Dave Aranda or something like that. I don't want this half-ass, middle of the road coach. Because, like we said on Monday, like Nebraska football needs to win, and this hire, is kind of the hallmark, I think, or is going to be the hallmark of Trev Albert's tenure. And it just, what you said made me think of the fact that, yes, Mickey needs to win with these players, of course, obviously, but I feel like some positions are just so in need of help that, it would be tough to judge him based off of these next 4 games. I'm not saying we shouldn't, and I'm not saying, if he loses out, he should automatically get the head coaching position. But we just had to move defensive tackle Jalen Weaver to the offensive line because we're not getting enough production from there. And I know Weaver and Mickey talked about it, so it wasn't a surprise to anybody. But man, when you have to move one of your defensive recruits to offensive line just to kind of get some, try to make, something out of what you have, then that's a real issue to me. And I get Weaver has good size. I think he's 6'8", but still, it just shows that we need to recruit better, and we need a coach that can do that. And I think, obviously Mickey can do that.
Yeah, I mean that I think there are some issues, there obviously are issues with this team and the offensive line, but like one question I keep is why is Bryce Benhart still going out on the field? I mean, I've seen Brant Banks play and it is not that bad. So like that's what I don't understand is it literally cannot get worse than Bryce Benhart not able to. I mean, the dude like Casey Thompson is getting sacked sometimes before he's even out of his stance. I mean, that happened when the guy blocked the field goal. He just stood there.
Yeah.
Like, dude, get his out. That's what I don't understand is there's got to be, some changes. I mean, why haven't they played Brant Banks? I mean, I don't understand it. I get he only played a little bit against Indiana, and the other guy they tried, Hunter Anthony or whatever. I mean, but yeah, the offensive line is definitely a big issue, and I mean, I think Trev knows that, but I feel like that, good coaches, like I said, good coaches, they can find a way to cover up some of those warts. And I think Nebraska, really needs to find a way to be able to do that. And we'll see what happens. I mean, Minnesota's a good team, but they're not a perfect team by any stretch of the imagination. I can say the same thing about Wisconsin and Iowa. And so I think, if he can win 2 out of those 3 games, and I know that only gets him to 5-7, I think that'll have them more in the conversation, depending on how these other 2 games go, especially if they're competitive. I think we've seen that Trev, can look beyond the stats. If they play 4 really good games and only happen to go 2-2, I don't think Trev is going to hold it against them too much, against Mickey too much. He didn't hold it against Scott last year, but I think if they come out and get drubbed by Minnesota this weekend, get drubbed by Michigan, and then lose, I think it's a different story. So we just have to see how it plays out, but it does add some intrigue. At the same time, it doesn't mean that Mickey's gonna get this job, but I do think it shows why he's a legitimate candidate, and that he's probably not going to be at Nebraska forever. I mean, that's the thing people need to realize.
Yeah.
Even if he does stick around, he's not going to be here for forever, because he wants to be a head coach, and I think he should be at some point. I think he deserves an opportunity somewhere, maybe at Nebraska.
Yeah, and I just worry, and this is my big thing, and I know I've said it before, but it's worth repeating again. I just worry about the people who have the money to help out with this head coaching search, making a safe hire, i.e., Bill O'Brien, and half-assing the search, and us just not completing the search enough thoroughly in order to move the needle. Now, I'm not saying that Mickey Joseph is absolutely going to move the needle or Coach XYZ is going to move the needle, but I just worry that this whole process with the people who have, control of it the most in terms of financials are really going to kind of just bungle this process.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think that's up to Trev to, keep those guys kind of in their place. And, I think that's where he has to just take the lead in this process and try to shut out the outside noise. And that's, it's
Which
not
is
always
hard to
easy.
do, yeah.
Yeah, it's not always easy to do. And Trev knows that, but I think it's easier for him than somebody else who's an outsider. I mean, I know people get annoyed with that type of stuff, but he's not Bill Moose or somebody. He knows what it takes to win. He's got credibility with Tom Osborne, and
Right.
so I feel like he has a little more pull in terms of that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, losing Mickey would be bad. I mean, there's no question about it. I think that he would immediately, if he was hired at Arizona State, I think he would immediately try to flip Malachi Coleman, and I think he would have a good chance of pulling that off. I think he would probably flip Arnold Barnes. I think Marion Miller would probably immediately flip.
Yeah.
I think that. So I mean, people just need to be aware of that, and that stuff happens this time of year. It's I don't know if that's as I've kind of said before, I don't know if that's a good enough reason to say Mickey should be the next head coach is because we won't get these recruits or whatever. But it is going to be a tough blow if it happens.
Honestly, I think we're at that point because we really do not have a ton of depth, and so we need these immediate impact recruits just to tread water and continue to build that depth. I mean, there are some positions where you just look at them and you're like, what the heck is going on here? Like, so I know there is, two recruits aren't going to make a difference, or, two recruits, for programs that have been well built, like a house, for programs that have the solid foundation, losing those type of recruits, that can be that happens. We're just going to have to recruit harder. But for Nebraska, who needs to win now, for an impatient fan base and for a crowded Big Ten, they need these immediate impact recruits right now. So ordinarily, I would agree with you 100%, but I don't know if Nebraska has, the ability to lose those types of players and still be okay enough to get to that next level.
See, and I think, I disagree a little bit because outside of Malachi Coleman, I really don't see a lot of impact freshmen in this recruiting class right now. I mean, that, like, if those are the guys in the Big Ten, you got to play upperclassmen. You have to play, unless you have to be really good as a freshman to play.
Riley Manpopo?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, but you need to get in the transfer portal and the JUCOs. I mean, you need to legitimately get like 20 guys, like probably 10 guys on both sides of the ball, because that's just where this team is at. And then sprinkle in some of those freshmen too, and obviously allow them to compete. But I think relying too much on, a bunch of freshmen to come in and turn this around. I mean, adding depth is one thing, but if if Nebraska's, expecting a bunch of these guys to start next year, I don't think that's going to be a promising situation. Even, Malachi Coleman, like, he could definitely make an impact for sure next year, but you just never know how guys are going to transition up, and sometimes takes a little bit, and we don't know who's going to enroll early. So I mean, I think whether it's Mickey or a new head coach, I mean, I think Nebraska is going to be one of the busiest programs in the JUCO ranks and the transfer portal ranks, because this 2 deep needs to be totally rebuilt. And I don't think, because honestly, with this class, I really, I've said it before, I've written on my blog, but I don't know that they're going to get to 20 signees. I think they're at 15 right now. And there's a few other guys, there's Mason Goldman, Ryan Robinson's still out there, a couple other guys that they've visited, but, I don't know that they're going to get past 20 commitments. And so that, is obviously about 5 spots for a lot of the JUCOs and so I mean, I think they're going to be taking a lot of guys in the transfer portal and with the JUCO ranks. And that's why it is important, as we've said, to get this hire done. But at the same time, it's definitely going to hurt if they lost Malachi Coleman. That would really sting. I mean, Arnold Barnes will, that would hurt, and some other things, but losing the top player in Nebraska, would definitely be, a major impact of losing Mickey Joseph, which, depending on who the new head coach is, that's not guaranteed to happen, but I guarantee you that Mickey would be,
calling his phone. Yep.
Making the move. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just not frustrating to hear a report like this, but it does make me a little bit worried. And, people say, oh, Mickey's not going to get the head job and this, that, and the other thing. And while that may be true, you're still losing a valuable recruiter, and you need good recruiters on this staff. There's one thing to, recruit a kid, and then there's one thing to be able to recruit and develop, because we've recruited a lot of good players over the years. Development has been absolute trash, to be honest with you. And
Yeah.
so Mickey checks both boxes of recruitment and development. And I'm not saying that other coaches can't do it, obviously. I mean, other coaches can, but I mean, this is the first coach we've had in a while that has been able to do that on an assistant type of level. Because let's face it, the graveyard of once promising prospects who come to Nebraska and don't live up to their expectations is rather large.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Frost era staff, they couldn't develop. They didn't evaluate talent very well. They didn't recruit very well. It was like Mickey said, they just were taking guys too quickly. If you read the Sports Illustrated article by Ross Dellinger, which if you
That was a
haven't,
great piece.
yeah, I would highly recommend it. It talks, about how Mickey really kind of goes about the recruiting process, and it is a big deal. But at the same time, Nebraska needs to be smart on the development side, and I think Trev Alberts said it best. He said Nebraska needs to be the best developmental program in college football, and I agree with that. I mean, I really think I've said it before. I know people probably get sick of it, but they need to look at that model that Michigan has had, and I'm not saying that they can get that type of level of recruits. But in terms of like the Big Ten West, Nebraska has out recruited anybody, and they can out recruit anybody. I mean, that will change with USC in the mix, obviously, but there's no reason that Nebraska can't be, I mean, if you look at Ohio State, Michigan in the Big Ten East, there's no reason it can't be USC, Nebraska in the West. I mean, that's where Nebraska should be. They just need to find a coach that can, hit on the right recruits and then get coaches that can actually develop those guys. Because the fact is, there is a ton of 3-star players that go to the NFL. I mean, there just is. There's probably a bigger, if you look at the top 100, all those guys are like big time players, but there's a bigger difference between probably like the 75th ranked player and the 20th player than like the 150th ranked player and the 500th ranked player. I mean, it's about finding guys who meet the measurables, and a lot of these guys haven't. For either they are in an area that's not as strong traditionally as football, and they don't get evaluated as well. I mean, sometimes they just ignore people. Like, I don't know if Xavier Worthy, the receiver at Texas, right? For a long time in high school, he was a 3-star recruit. A 3-star recruit. He was ranked in the 800s until like halfway through his senior season. Then he shot up to like 50th. So it's like you can't always trust these rankings, but what you need to do is get a coach that can evaluate talent early, get on the right kids early, and get in, and then say, hey, this is what he can be down the road. And I feel like Nebraska just has not done a good job of that. I feel like Mickey's doing a good job of that right now, and that's why I would like him to stay. I mean, I think that would be ideal, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. I think this game this weekend, that's what's so hard to tell. I don't know if Trev is taking these games into account. I mean, I'm sure he is. I know he's taking into account what he's seeing on the field, but
I
I don't
hate
know
to
if
look at it.
he's.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I just don't know if he's sitting up there being like, we have to win this Minnesota game, or I'm crossing Mickey off my list.
I hate to be like this, but I think if Casey Thompson doesn't play, I personally wouldn't look at this game as a blow for Mickey. I honestly wouldn't necessarily cross him off the list should Casey Thompson, you know, not be healthy and not play. If he can play, then maybe that would sway me a little bit more. But if Casey Thompson can't play, uh, then I don't like our chances.
Yeah, I don't like our chances either. And I'd say, here's my thing: if the Minnesota game looks like the second half against Illinois, I think Mickey's done. I think he has no. I don't think he gets any consideration after that, because I don't care if your backup quarterback's in the game. Your offense needs to be able to move the football. Chuba Purdy was a top 200 recruit. Logan Smothers, I saw him, play 3 pretty good quarters against Iowa. I'm not saying they have to win the game, but if the offense literally can't move the football, if you can't get these guys prepared, I just don't think that's a very good look. And if you go out and just get absolutely lambasted by Minnesota, and if it looks like that Illinois game, then, I just don't really think that, regardless of the injury situation or whatever, I think that shows you're not getting, the most out of your players.
And also, you need to be the head coach and assert what you want to do. If you want to play Logan Smothers, play Logan Smothers. Don't play Joe
Yep.
Purdy. I understand, you want to to be honest, make Mark Whipple happy, probably. But I mean, Mark Whipple's style with this offensive line, like his style of quarterback, doesn't necessarily get the job done. I think, Smothers, he's not the next, Joe Montana, but I think he does fit the offense a little bit better at this point in the season because of
Mhm.
his ability to run and scramble, if nothing else, to get extra time and to keep plays alive. I mean, I felt
Yep.
like with, Scott Frost and Adrian Martinez, there was no balance. It was just run Adrian Martinez 50 times.
Mhm.
With what we have now, like Anthony Grant and the type of running backs we have, we can still run the football with the running backs, but we can definitely also add running quarterback play, and it doesn't have to be our main focus. But I would still like to see some running quarterback play and um, getting the quarterbacks out of the pocket. And that has to be, Mickey's job to say, hey, why don't we put Logan in instead of Chuba?
Yep.
Because I don't want to see more of Chuba on Saturday if it's going to look like the second half against Illinois.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I mean is you have to take I'm not saying, you're not always going to beat the other team, right? But like you need to take the pieces that you have and put together some type of game plan that gives you an opportunity to win this game. And if you look at it, the way I think Nebraska he needs to go to Mark Whipple and say, okay, the number one goal for this game is to have the fewest amount of plays overall possible. If we can snap the ball 60 times and Minnesota can snap it 58, that would be great. Stop trying to stop trying
Yep.
to snap the goddamn ball with 5 seconds off the play clock when you have a terrible quarterback. Like, I'm just so sick of that. But anyways, last week to also,
No, I mean, I think it's
let's
a
stick
fair.
to the but yeah,
Go
but and
ahead.
stick to the running game though. I mean, Anthony Grant was running the ball well last week against the number one run defense in the Big Ten, and that's what I did. They were only down by 11
Yeah,
points, man. Like
yeah,
you put Smothers out there and you get a field goal, even suddenly it's an 8-point game, and then you get the ball back. You only need one scorer to tie it. So it just didn't the idea that like yeah, if it was 27-0, sure, I could see that, or 21-0, but it's like one drive gets you back in the game, and it was weird because I thought Smothers had a couple of nice runs, and it's not like
yeah,
he can't throw. I mean, I know
yeah.
he probably doesn't throw as well as Chuba, but it's not. I mean, Chuba was not throwing the ball well last week.
I feel like Mark kind of pushed for Prairie to be in, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well,
But
he recruited him, like you said. He's Chuba's kind of more Whipple's. I mean, if Chuba is anybody's guy on this entire team, he's Whipple's guy. He recruited him here.
yeah, didn't he commit to Pittsburgh just days before Whipple came to Nebraska?
He didn't commit, but like
Or they
Whipple
in-house
went.
offer, that's what it was.
Yeah, Whipple went down there basically as the Pitt coach because he was still with Pitt at the time, and he offered him at Pitt, and then he's got moved over to Nebraska. So I mean, I feel like he would have got Chuba there if it wouldn't have been to Nebraska. So
If I'm Mickey Joseph, I tell Mark Whipple, wait until the play clock gets down to like 10 seconds, snap the
yep,
football, and run the play. Because there was one point in the game when, the offense was on the field. I went to go get some cheese puffs. Next thing I know, the defense is back out on the field again. It's like I barely blinked and they're already out on the field. They can't be out on the field for 100 plays again. And they do run too fast of an offense. And yes, I know the defense has to do its job, but at times in Saturday's game, much like the Purdue game, they look absolutely gassed.
yep. Yeah, and it would be, it's one thing if you are moving the ball well and all those things are. I get the up tempo. I mean, I'm all for it. Put the pressure on the defense. But if you've got the inferior team, it makes sense to. And if you have a bad defense and a bad quarterback, I mean, which I'm not saying Purdy is, but he's not Casey Thompson. I mean, it makes sense to shorten the game, to try to have there be fewer plays, have your defense on the field, and just get it to the fourth quarter competitive and see what can happen. I think that's got to be the formula on Saturday. I mean, right now they're a 15.5-point underdog. It's not looking pretty. We'll see. I mean, I think they did a pretty good job last week against Chase Brown, and they're going to have to do the same against, Mo Ibrahim this week, and we'll see. I don't know. I'm not real optimistic, I guess, about this game, but it changes if Casey Thompson's in there. So we'll see. I have a little bit of hope after, Mickey's update to saying he's not fully out this week, but if he's not practicing by Thursday, I think that's a bad sign.
I think they're going to do whatever they can to try to get Casey to go. But no, I mean, just to get back to your point really quickly about the tempo stuff, Mark loves to try to get the ball to Trey Palmer, and obviously for good reason because he's one of the best receivers in the country. And, I think if they ran slower tempo, they could, utilize Palmer a bit more by going for those deep shots and surprising the defense and lulling the defense to sleep. Then those type of deep ball reads would be there when necessary. Instead of trying to feed Palmer every single play deep, the defense catches on and the tempo doesn't change. Having a mix and match of tempos and trying to get the ball to Palmer once you've got the defense like sleeping, so to speak, that would be probably more effective.
Yeah, and it'll be, I mean, regardless, they need to be able to run the football against Minnesota. And, Smothers can help him do that. I mean, Chuba can run too. I don't know how much he's really done a lot of read option type things, but I mean, he's athletic. He can move a little bit. And that's one of the things that, I kind of liked about him. And they said they were going to give him some packages. I mean, I have to believe he can play better than he played last week, if he gets a full week of practice. So, who knows? But either way, it's up to Whipple and the staff to, put together a game plan. I mean, now you have a whole week. You've got a whole week. At this point, they should know who they're going to kind of play if it's not Casey. And you need to give that guy a game plan that puts him in a position to be successful. You need to detail that game plan for Logan Smothers or Chuba Purdy. Get 10, 15 plays or whatever that they're comfortable with, that they like, and you just need to go out and try to execute as best you can and just take care of the football, run it, and try to just muck up this game and try to win it at the end. I mean, that's the only way I really see Nebraska winning this game, trying to get some turnovers and, blah, 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 but just don't lose the game at the quarterback position.
And it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I wonder, because I did see some, things from Chuba Purdy in the spring game that I really liked. His ability to make reads quickly, his ability to get the ball out quick. And we just saw none of that on Saturday. But I also think Chuba did a lot of running as he was trying to not get hit. And like I said on Monday,
I think he just panicked a little bit. It was his first kind of game and he just panicked and it was a tough situation.
And like I said on Monday, I think Casey's done a good job of not panicking with the entire defensive lines coming at him. Yeah. I don't know. Obviously, Chuba hasn't really had, that fun experience yet. So, I could definitely see where he panicked. I mean, and I'm not bashing him at all. I'm definitely rooting for him. But we're now at a point where Nebraska needs to win some football games, and, we'll see how it goes.
And Casey's Casey's 24. He's a veteran quarterback. So, he's seen a lot of that, and it's tough. And young quarterbacks start seeing the rush, and especially when, he's athletic, instead of standing in there and going through his reads, he just started running around, and then, then he's trying to throw across his body, and the little push passes were, I don't know what the hell that was, but I was a little harsh on Chuba. I'm going to reserve my judgment, but that was a bad half of football. So they need to. But that's the thing is if I'm Trev Alberts, right, and you see Chuba play terrible last week and say he starts this week, comes out and plays decent. 1 sec, my computer's going to die. 1 sec here, guys. The real professional IT here.
Nothing like working from home, am I right?
Yeah. Oh man, we're off the rails here.
As if we're on the rails always when recording these things.
Okay.
I can't wait till basketball season.
Usually have my power cord plugged in here, but anyway, as I was saying, what was I talking about now?
Push passes?
Yeah, the push passes. Well, anyway, so if I'm Trev Alberts and Chuba comes out this week and he looks a lot better, right, and say he comes out and has a really productive game, then that would be something that I would take as encouraging, as Mickey being the head coach. So, like you said, it's not, I don't think it's all about the wins and losses. I think if they come out and play a really close game and then are able to win a couple down the stretch, I think that could change things. So, that was kind of, the point I was getting at,
Yeah.
in that, yeah, Chuba looked bad, but if he gets some coaching this week and some reps, and some game plans that work for him, then, I think that would be a positive thing in Mickey's favor.
Well, Mickey also said this week that something to the effect of, we're going to make sure all three quarterbacks are ready. And so I'm wondering if maybe whoever it is, Smothers or Purdy, if they'll rotate this week if Casey can't go. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that because I do think Smothers brings, like I said, a running element to the game. And I could see where, Smothers could be brought in for some packages. And there's a lot you can do with Logan Smothers. And, I would like to see Chuba Purdy kind of really excel in this game just to get his feet back under him. So I'll be interested to see how they play the quarterback position if Casey can't go. And, you know, I'm wondering if we'll see Smothers out there on Saturday in certain packages at the very least to give Nebraska more of that running element. Because quite honestly, watching Smothers play on Saturday, I had forgotten about what it was like to have a running quarterback because truthfully, we haven't seen Casey Thompson run a whole lot this year because that's just not his game. I mean, we have seen him run backwards as he's tried to, run for his life, but like effective running is my point here.
Yeah, and I think it can be a little predictable, but at the same time, when you have the extra quarterback, you have an extra blocker. So, it kind of works out all around. And I think that's why, even when Smothers has come in this year, defenses know what's coming. It's still worked. I mean, eventually, I'd like to see him play action and, do a fake run and bomb it to Trey Palmer or something. I mean, that's what you got to put in some of those wrinkles. But yeah,
Right.
I probably would expect to see both of them a little bit in this matchup. You gotta pull out all the stops in this one, like for sure.
You definitely do. And, even if teams know that Smothers is in and he's going to run the football, if you're a running back, and this is what I can't understand about Anthony Grant, just falling forward gives you 2 yards. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes Anthony Grant, he's great, but sometimes like that first down play we talked about on Monday, I don't know where he was trying to go when he had the first down right in front of him. But anyway, you know, just falling forward gets you positive yards when you're running the football. So, I mean, just getting back to the basics and simple things. If you're, Mark Whipple calling the plays, I think that's important, and just stop trying to be cute and just take what the defense gives you.
Yeah, for sure. It's they're gonna have to come up with some good game plans, and we'll know more, when Casey's injury status, because that's gonna change a lot, if he's able to play or if he's not.
I
And
wonder when they'll announce it.
yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing. Well, here's my thing: if he doesn't practice on Thursday, because their Friday practice is more of a walkthrough, so if he
Yep.
doesn't practice Thursday, I really don't think he's gonna play. That's just my prediction.
That would make sense because when I used to help out with the football team at my college, Thursday would be the final like full day of practice. Friday would be just the final tune-up day, adjustments, formations, no contact. Coach call kick return. Kick return would come out, make sure everybody is out on that unit. Just basic, walk through type of game stuff in preparation for Saturday. So I do agree with you honestly that I think Thursday is the day when they decide who can play and who can't.
And yeah, as I suppose we'll start wrapping it up here. But one thing just to let people know is that with this Mickey to Arizona State thing, and there's going to be a lot of rumors coming out in the next 4 weeks. We're in November, but I want to say within the next 4 weeks, like 4 weeks from today, we will have a head coach, no matter whether it's Mickey or somebody else.
Yep.
But buckle in because these next 4 weeks are going to be a wild ride.
And me and Chris will write about what we hear. We're not going to I'm not going to say we're not going to speculate, but we're not going to try to lead you guys on or anything like that. I understand there's rumors flying everywhere, and I'm just going to offer my opinions. I'm not going to try to say I talked to my source and he said blah blah blah. I'm not going to do any of that BS. I'm just going to offer my opinion, but you're going to see a lot of things flying around. Always pay attention to the Twitter @name. Don't pay attention to the regular black Twitter name at the top because those can be easily changed.
Yeah. What I would say is, there's certain reporters I trust. I don't trust anybody that says I heard from this person da 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 da. I trust Steve Sipple, I trust Sean Callahan, I trust Brian Christopherson. If those guys say something, I believe it. Mitch Sherman to another extent, but those are the three guys that I really follow, especially Sipple. And I think Sean Callahan is the most plugged in guy. He's he got the Husker story, he got this story. So, what those two guys say, that's what I'm going to go with. I wouldn't listen to these guys who were like, I heard third hand from my janitor's best friend's wife on the, it's like, dude, what are you talking about? No, so yeah, don't buy any of that stuff. And I'll throw out a lot of analysis, but I'll let those guys kind of flesh out the reporting and go from there. But I think Sean Callahan, he said this, but I think he's right. There's going to be a hire, the day after the Iowa game.
And
Maybe
also,
before.
yeah, no, I definitely agree because, like we said, they kind of have to keep up with, the transfer portal and, early signing day. But also, I'd like to throw another reporter out there, Zach Carpenter. He's kind of new, but Zach Carpenter over at Inside Nebraska is a great follow. We've talked a couple times, and he really knows his stuff. He's really done a great job, and I know you guys probably heard of him, but it's easy to get lost when you have the Sipples and the Callahans doing their work as well because they're so thorough with it. So also follow Zach Carpenter, and we'll probably give you more lists of reports to trust as this thing goes on because just like last off season, I think we're gonna have another busy one ahead of us.
Yeah, we definitely are. We definitely are. So
never a dull moment around here.
Yeah, there's not. So yeah, make sure you're following along with the channel. Subscribe, like, and comment on the videos. We're gonna have another video out on Friday once we get hopefully a little more clarity on who's going to play quarterback. We'll go through our usual keys and predictions. Just kind of a lot up in the air, and we needed to talk about this whole Mickey Joseph situation. So make sure you also are checking out HuskerBigRed.com and thegreatcornholio.org. Lots of great content there. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
And thanks for sticking around through our technical difficulties. So we'll see you Friday.